did it to my dad? My husband suddenly fell down floating at the mouth while we were eating. When I tried to call an ambulance to save him, my 9-year-old son stopped me. I was speechless at the horrifying comment from my normally gentle son. Why would he do that? At that moment, my husband's voice came to me in a whisper. Please help me, please help me. Help me, please. I came to my senses, seeing him barely breathing, and called an ambulance. When I asked my son what had happened, the shocking truth came out. Oh my God, that's awful. This event changed our lives as a family. I am Vanessa, a 36-year-old office worker. Last year, I got married to my husband, Reginald, with my 9-year-old son, Horace, and we are now a family of 3. My husband and I are the same age, and we are both remarried. I lost my ex-husband in a car accident 5 years ago. He left me a fortune to live on, but I was worried about how I would raise my son, who is different from other children, by myself. My son Horace was a very gifted child. At the age of 1, he began to talk fluently, and by the time he was 3, he had learned hiragana and everyday kanji characters, and by the time he was 5, he had mastered the computer we had at home. My ex-husband and I had promised each other that we would take good care of his talents. However, we made sure that his intelligence would not be used for something bad. To us, he was just a very smart but cute son, just like any other child. Then one day, my ex-husband got in a car accident. He regained consciousness in the hospital right after the accident, and I was able to talk to him for, "Hey, stay with me. Vanessa, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Please take care of Horace." Dad. Horace, be a strong boy and protect your mother. Daddy will always be by your side. When he finally said that, he lost consciousness, and 3 days later he was gone. I was at loss with my son, who had just turned 4 years old. "I'm here for you, Mommy." He comforted me with these words. With Horace as my support, I went about my daily life, but it was as if there was a big hole in my heart. 4 years later, I met Reginald, who started his new job at my company. He was a very cheerful person who always joked around and made everyone around him feel at ease. He seemed to have heard about my situation from a colleague and approached me kindly. He said, "Vanessa, you have been through a lot, haven't you? I've lost both my parents and my wife in the last few years, so I know exactly what you're going through." He proposed to me right away, but I turned him down because I felt sorry for Horace if he didn't get along with his new father. But Reginald never gave up and approached me again and again. When I let him meet Horace, he played catch with him, and I was gradually attracted to his kindness. When I asked Horace what he thought of Reginald, I promised my dad that I would protect my mom. If Mommy can marry that guy and be happy, I'm all for it. Tears flowed down my face at my son's kind words, which I couldn't believe he was 8 years old. Then we got married and moved in together, with Reginald moving into my house. At first, my husband was kind to me and our son, and he even called Horace Papa and missed him. But after 3 months, he changed drastically. At home, he would give me orders on what to do, but he would just sit around and not move. "Hey, beer." "Yes, wait a minute. I'll get you a beer, Dad. Mom just got home from work and she's tired, so let her rest." "You shut up, Horace. You'll always be mama. Are you a baby?" He began to talk to my son in an increasingly abusive manner, and I began to regret having married. However, I still thought at the time that he was originally a kind person and might understand if I talked to him. Hey, since we both work, can't you help me with the housework a little? What? I married an old hag with kids, and you have a problem with that? My husband shouted angrily and threw a teacup at me. Horace immediately stood up to protect me and said, "Don't do such a terrible thing to my mother." My husband then yelled at him, "You little brat, stay out of this." I don't know if it is right to put up with him any longer, if it is just me, or if he will continue to behave badly to my son as well. I don't know if it's right for me to put up with this any longer. Please divorce me. I'll divorce you if you give me your assets. If you don't give them to me, your cute son might suffer a terrible fate. I felt a shiver down my spine when I saw my husband grinning in a creepy manner. It was only then that I began to suspect that Reginald had married me for my fortune. My son seemed to sense something more than I did. Daddy is acting strangely. He might be up to something. Mom, be careful. I understand. I have a better idea. You better obey him without complaining. I have an idea. I did as my son said. After that, Horace said, "I will be the kind of son that Daddy likes. I love you, Daddy," and tried to be more affectionate with my husband than ever before. He also hid his cleverness and pretended to be an innocent child. Tao and Daddy, you're amazing. All those Chinese character printouts I can't read. You're so cool. You know how to use the computer so well. Teach me how to use it too. How can a second grader understand it? You should study Chinese characters on your own. Yeah, okay. If I do what you say, will I get smarter too? Well, it's hard to be as much of a genius as I am. My son moves like a secretary, patting my husband on the shoulder and carrying coffee into the study. Although Horace can read high school level Chinese characters, my husband was completely oblivious and thought he was an innocent elementary school student. Horace, give me beer and clean up the study later. My husband is not satisfied with my son, who is taking good care of him. Eventually, Reginald, who usually locked the door to his study, started to let Horace come and go freely. He was as cold to me as ever, but one day he suddenly spoke kind words to me. "I'm sorry I couldn't be nicer to you before, since I've been taking advantage of you. I'll cook dinner for you today as an apology." What? Thank you. I thought something was wrong, but I went along with my husband. Then my husband told me to stay out of the kitchen and began to cook something. Horace looked at my husband with suspicion, but then he went away as if he had a sudden idea. A few minutes later, my husband came over to me with a tray full of food. "Now it's ready. It's my special beef stew. Vanessa, let's eat." My husband had a big smile on his face, but I noticed that behind his eyes, he was not smiling at all. He was rushing me to eat quickly, and I had a bad feeling about what was going to happen. "Daddy, I was cleaning up your study and found a big yellow envelope under the desk. I wonder what it says." "What is it? Don't touch it. It's my work document." My son left there and came to the table in place of my husband, who hurriedly entered the study and quickly replaced my plate with his. He winked at me in surprise, but I remained confused. Why did I find the papers that were supposed to be tucked away in the back of my bag? My husband came out mumbling to himself, but soon returned to his smiling face and joined us at the dining table. "Come on, let's eat." Bon appetite. Reginald, grinning as he watched me eat, had a look of satisfaction on his face that I had never seen before. "What? Is there something on my face?" "Oh no, I thought you were eating it like it was delicious." "It's delicious." "That's good. Eat it all." Nodding good-naturedly, my husband did the same, and put some of the stew in his mouth. However, about 15 minutes after he started eating, "F, I'm in pain. What, can't breathe? Why me?" My husband suddenly groaned while eating, said some nonsense, and fell down frothing at the mouth. "What? You? What's wrong? Oh my God, I have to call an ambulance." You don't have to call it. I did it for you." "What do you mean?" As I was already upset by this unexpected event, my son quietly restrained me, and I was stunned by the horrifying words that came out of his mouth. At that moment, my husband clung to my leg in a feeble voice and complained, "Help me, please." I came to my senses and called an ambulance in a panic, ignoring my son stopping me. I couldn't let my son become a criminal, and I knew I had to help him even if he was such a bastard. But when my son told me the truth while we were waiting for the ambulance, I was shaken with fear and anger. What happened is I would have fallen over flooding at the mouth had I eaten that dinner. Oh my. Later, my husband was rushed to the emergency room, and the paramedic asked me to accompany him, but I refused, telling them I would go to the hospital later. I was more worried about Horace, who was in shock because his father had collapsed because of me. He seemed calm, yet I could tell he was not as his mom. "Don't worry, Mommy is with you. Thank you for saving me. I'm glad you're okay. Horace must have tried very hard to save me." My son's body was cold and shaking, and tears were spilling from his big eyes. Then, waiting for Horace to calm down, we started gathering evidence. And it was here that we learned the terrible truth that my husband had been hiding. Meanwhile, my husband was rushed to the hospital where his stomach was cleansed and he survived. He woke up just as Horace and I were looking in on him. "Thank God you survived. They say you will be discharged in a few days." When Reginald saw me, his eyes were wide open and his mouth was gaping. "Why are you okay?" "What?" "Oh no, it's nothing." "I could not believe that you would fall ill after eating beef stew that you made." I said this intentionally, and I could see my husband's eyes swimming. Horace interrupted me, and his voice bubbled with innocence. "Mommy's plate had a lot of beef in it, so I wanted Daddy to have lots of meat, so I switched it out." This was, of course, my son's sarcasm, but upon hearing this, my husband glared at Horace in a devilish manner. "You must be thinking, how come you're supposed to have eaten poisoned beef stew, right?" Reginald's face turned red when I got to the point. "I know everything." "What are you talking about?" "I don't know anything." My husband seemed to be trying to keep a low profile, but that was not going to be the case. As a matter of fact, my son was secretly peeping from behind the door as my husband was pouring the stew onto his plate. I saw Reginald put a bag of powdery substance only on my plate. So my son, on the spur of the moment, went to my husband's study and dropped on the floor the papers of the expensive insurance policy on me that he had examined beforehand. Then, pretending to be illiterate, he lured my husband in by calling out to him, You replaced the plate on purpose." "Yes, I did. I'll never forgive anyone who tries to kill my mom. We have all the evidence we need." My husband turned pale for a moment, but immediately started laughing. "Ha. Don't you know that this kid's testimony is not evidence? They'll just laugh at you and say you must have been dreaming." "Well, this is a picture of you putting poison in the bottle, but..." "What?" My husband was surprised when my son showed him the screen of his cell phone. In fact, Horace, sensing the stench of Reginald's transformation after their marriage, had activated a surveillance camera that was in the house. It was something my ex-husband had purchased for him when he was a baby. When did you? I've also saved the poison stew as evidence. My husband bit his lip and glared at me as he heard the words coming out of my son's mouth one after another, but I was not going to be defeated by his threats. So I looked straight at Reginald. And not only did you try to kill me, but you also took the lives of your parents and your ex-wife for the insurance money. You're a horrible man. What? That's bullshit. I showed him the pictures I had taken of the information on the computer with my cell phone. How did you get that? I thought I erased it. Horace looked it all up for me. There is no way this dumb kid could have done it. In fact, my clever son also showed a talent for handling computers. While helping Reginald, he also observed and learned passwords and was able to use my husband's computer as if it were his own. Reginald had thought he had completely deleted the documents he thought were bad, but Horace was able to restore and examine the deleted data. I was surprised at his intelligence, even though he was my son. It turned out that her husband's parents and ex-wife had also taken their lives for the insurance money. You didn't realize it until the end, but Horace is a smart kid. I can't believe that a little boy like him could do this to me. You'll see. My husband approached me with a bloodshot look in his eyes and a grin on his face. He might be trying to take away the evidence with all his might. He was in bed earlier. I guess people get extra energetic when they are cornered. I was so terrified that my body stopped moving. Then Horace stood in front of me with his arms outstretched. What are you going to do to Mommy? Don't touch her. Huh? Don't make me laugh. It's about time the police got here, so you better stay out of it. You shouldn't touch her. It'll make your crime worse. Hearing the word police, Reginald turned pale. I had called the police after I had all the evidence. You can be honest with the police, when I coldly told him. So my husband trembled and asked me for help, changing his attitude. Vanessa, as you see. I apologize. I'm sorry. As I was just blinded by money. I won't do this again, so help me. It's too late to do anything. Then at least don't give the data on my computer to the police. I'm going to be behind bars for the rest of my life. You got what you deserved. You should have paid for your sins. Then the police arrived. I told them what had happened and gave them a plate of my husband's leftovers. The leftover stew, a bag of poison I had taken out of the garbage bag, information from the surveillance camera, and data in the computer. My husband was transferred to a police hospital for questioning. After that, I divorced my husband and demanded 3 million yen in alimony. I sold my parents' property in my husband's name and asked him to pay me with that money. Of course, my husband was sentenced to prison. After taking many people's lives, his crime is too serious to get out of prison. He will also be investigated for deceiving his parents and me out of a large sum of life insurance money, which he will be required to repay in the future. Meanwhile, I have returned to a peaceful life with Horace. My son is determined to protect me from now on. Horace is a precious treasure that my ex-husband left me. We will continue to live positively and cheerfully, caring for each other.